to make a video. I read over some MK Ultra books. They're not documents, but you know they always put the truth in books. Okay, so one was Programmed to Kill, and the other one was The Search for the Manchurian Candidate, and I highlighted some of the things that seem to apply to us. I'm just going to go ahead and read from the pages that I skimmed down, and you can listen if you'd like to. Okay, by Verdier's account, the objective of the would-be brainwasher is to access those areas of the brain that are outside of the individual's conscious control. This is accomplished, the doctor explained, by circumventing the normal inhibiting response of the cerebral cortex so that the individual's voluntary conscious self-control or their will be bypassed or short-circuited. In order to disable what Verdier referred to as the brain's cortical block, all of the following were recommended: alcohol, euphoric drugs, isolation, solitary confinement, and the most dramatic and unique item in the brainwashing arsenal, hypnosis. All of these brainwashing techniques significantly have been exhaustively researched by the CIA. Page 18. Verdier went on to explain that in order to achieve truly lasting states of brainwashing or mind control, it is necessary to subject the victim to profound and deep emotional states. The recommended emotional states are fear, shock, and anxiety, all of which have an intense disinhibitive effect on the human brain. Okay, so this definitely applies to me because I'm getting everything. I just went to the doctor like yesterday, and she measured it, my blood pressure 3 times. The first time was like 150 over something. Second time was like 140 over something. And then she did it manually a third time, and it came down to 130 and something. I don't know if they did that on purpose to try to lower the numbers, but that's besides the point. Anxiety. We all have anxiety from all of the PTSD that we've gotten. Okay, where was I? Even more effective is pain because, according to the eminent neurologist Dr. Walter Penfield, 5 sensations of the brain from the muscular sensory system enter the subcortical brain regions directly. I also received that. With a passage seemingly lifted from Estabrooks' writings, Verdier left no doubt that pain and fear are the most useful items in MK Ultra. I just want to say that, like, okay, I initially was getting followed. I've had anxiety my whole life, and it's gotten way worse ever since I got targeted. First, it was just following, and then a year later, I heard voices, and then maybe a year after that, they made it obvious that they were shocking me and causing muscle spasms and the pain that they've caused me, in the nerves, and so on and so forth. Okay, page 19. Threats of death are used as a basic tool by brainwashing communists. Even among them, however, this threat is used sparingly, for they know that humans quickly adapt to this type of threat, especially if it is repeatedly given but never carried out. In order to avoid this routine of stressful emotional situations, they have been known to casually execute prisoners for the apparent effect it has on others. This sounds kind of like when they tell them to target us, or the same thing's going to happen to them. It's kind of the same. The actions that Verdier predictably attributed to brainwashing communists precisely mirror the stories that have been told repeatedly by self-described survivors of ritual abuse. These victims speak of receiving frequent death threats directed against both themselves and their family members. They speak also of having those threats reinforced through their forced witnessing of and even participation in the killing of others. Freud recognized that ritual abuse is likely the primary cause of the psychological problems that he observed in his female patients. Okay. Author Kevin Marin noted that Freud had commented on the marked similarity between that his patients told him and the account of the witchcraft confessions of the invariably abused them sexually and in a loathsome manner. This has also been happening to me because they have been causing muscle spasm in my groin area. People who hear V2K tend to usually end up getting everything else, and they've raped me remotely through these energy weapons. Okay, why are there confessions under torture so like the communications made by my patients in psychological treatment? I don't know. I kind of copied and just kind of threw stuff in here. Page 21. In early 1950s, the CIA was looking for especially gifted subjects to study dissociative states, which could be induced and controlled to some extent with hypnosis and drugs. I've also experienced this. But this had happened to me before I ever realized that I was a targeted individual, and it happened, the way that it had happened was I dissociated for a week straight, and my anxiety completely disappeared, and then it would disappear for about 3 weeks, and then the next day after that, I'd wake up and it'd start all over again for another week, and then after that, it just stopped completely. Okay. U.S. Navy psychologist claims that the Office of Naval Intelligence had taken convicted murderers from military prisons, used behavior modification techniques on them, and then relocated them in American embassies throughout the world. The Navy psychologist was Lieutenant Commander Thomas Narut of the U.S. Regional Medical Center in Naples, Italy. The intelligence community, it seemed, was recruiting from the prisons to make use of the natural talents of convicted killers to produce the fabled Manchurian candidates, otherwise known as mind-controlled assassins. I don't really think that it matters. I think they take prisoners, and they also create criminals, I think, from basic society. They target us, and then we do crimes. Sometimes we don't even know that we're targeted. Okay, the operation described by Narut involved killers drawn from military prisons, though there is a good possibility that parallel programs are being conducted in civilian prisons as well. Prisons, after all, have provided fertile ground for any number of MKUltra sub-projects for decades. As the Napa Sentinel article noted, mind control experiments permeate mental institutions and prisons. That was particularly true in the 60s and 70s. The NATO conference at which Dr. Narut dropped his bombshell was held in July 1975. Several years after the publication of Henry's books, journalist Maury Terry told a story with chilling parallels to the one told by Henry and Otis. What Terry revealed in The Ultimate Evil is that the murders attributed to the Sons of Sam and the Manson family, as well as numerous other interconnected killings, including possibly the Zodiac murders, were not what they appeared to be. Rather than the random work of serial mass murderers, many were actually contract hits carried out for specific purposes by an interlocking network of satanic cults. In other words, they were professional hits orchestrated in disguise to look like the work of another lone crazy serial killer. So, reading this right here, you automatically, as a targeted individual, you know that most of these shootings are caused because we are targeted and we're kind of driven into a corner. It turns out most of these serial killers that are being glorified were MKUltra. Okay, so Terry's book has been unfairly maligned by much of the media. His contention is that David Berkowitz had nothing to do with the planning of the killings. He was just one of the several gunmen. Berkowitz was essentially a patsy who took the fall to protect the rest of the cult, particularly those members who travel in the upper strata of society. I also believe that the Parkland shooter was one of these patsies. That scenario has been roundly ridiculed. Page 86, it's interesting also to note of the case of the man known as the railroad killer, Rafael Resendez Ramirez. On July 13, 1999, Ramirez was reported to have walked across a bridge from Juarez, Mexico into El Paso, Texas, and turned himself in. At the time, he was wanted for a string of 9 alleged serial killings. Mirroring the circumstances surrounding Henry's final arrest, Ramirez had been taken into custody several weeks prior by the U.S. Border Patrol, only to be promptly released despite his presence on the FBI Most Wanted list, and despite the issuing of alerts to the Immigration Service, and despite the fact that a nationwide manhunt was underway. Between this detainment and his surrender, Ramirez claimed 4 more victims. Apparently, he still had a little work left to complete. Having done so, Ramirez was then made the incomprehensible decision to surrender to Texas authorities. Crossing the border into Texas, Ramirez left a country with no death penalty and entered the execution capital of the Western world. The Los Angeles Times, in reporting on his surrender, noted that he was adamant that he wanted to surrender to a Texas Ranger and that he had not requested an attorney and was cooperating with something. 86. And then I think I went ahead and screen capped program to kill. Okay, this is the same book. Okay. Page 86. He was cooperating with detectives. That was the end of that one. In the same article, it is noted that the authorities say Ramirez is strikingly intelligent, not based on the actions he took July 13, 1999. But then again, perhaps Ramirez knows something about the Texas criminal justice system that the rest of us do not. Interestingly, though, Lucas was reported fascinated by the Ramirez case. While the manhunt was underway, he told the Houston Post, "I will follow his case on the TV. I'd like to meet him." They presumably would have much to talk about. Ramirez, by the way, was born in Matamoros, Mexico, and according to his mother, was raised there outside of the home by non-family members. At some time, I have started to hear funny voices, like a person calling me, but no one calls me. So here, you can see he hears voices. If you are a targeted individual, you don't necessarily have to hear voices, because they can also talk to you without you ever hearing them. I found out that they had been remote neuromonitoring me for the longest time before I ever heard any voices. Some of us, they choose to make us hear voices, though. I don't know exactly why. I think mine was in retaliation because I was trying to look up how much money my town might have been getting in terms of, like, grants and things, but I'm not sure. Okay, the Manchurian candidate. Also, don't let that keep you from trying to find out the truth. The term Manchurian candidate came into the language in 1959 when author Richard Condon made it the title of his best-selling novel that later became a popular movie starring Lawrence Harvey and Frank Sinatra. The story was about a joint Soviet-Chinese pilot to take an American soldier captured in Korea, condition him at a special brainwashing center located in Manchuria, and create a remote-controlled assassin who was supposed to kill the President of the United States. Page 15. The 1938 Murray had written Explorations of Personality, a notable book which laid out a whole battery of tests that could be used to size up the personalities of individuals. Spying is attractive to loonies, states Murray. Psychopaths, who are the people who spend their lives making up stories, revel in this field. The program's prime objective, according to Murray, was keeping out the crazies, as well as the sloths, irritants, bad actors, and free talkers. I also want to mention, in the beginning of my targeting, they were always saying that I had a split personality. Like, every time I'd go anywhere. And I'm assuming they're trying to actually cause a split personality in me. Page 17. Estabrook acknowledged that hypnosis did not work on everyone, and that only 1 person in 5 made a good enough subject to be placed in a deep trance or a state of somnambulism. He believed that only these subjects... Hold on. Okay. He believed that only these subjects could be induced to such things against their apparent will, as reveal secrets or commit crimes. He had watched respected members of the community make fools of themselves in the hands of stage hypnotists, and he had compelled his own students to reveal fraternity secrets and the details of private love affairs, all of which the subjects presumably did not want to do. Psychology Department at Colgate University. George Etsy Estabrook. 22. Nearly every agency document stressed goals like controlling an individual to the point where he will do our bidding against his will and even against such fundamental laws of nature and self-preservation. 23. In December 1950, Morse Allen told his boss, Paul Gaynor, a retired brigadier general with a long background in counterintelligence and interrogation, that he had heard of experiments with an electro-sleep machine in Richmond, Virginia hospital. Such an invention appealed to Allen because it supposedly put people to sleep without shock or convulsions. The Bluebird team had been using drugs to bring on a state similar to a hypnotic trance. And Allen hoped this machine would allow an operator to put people into deep sleep without having to resort to chemicals. At the end of 1951, Allen talked to a famed psychiatrist whose name, like most of the others, the CIA has deleted from the documents released, about a gruesome but more practical technique. This psychiatrist, a cleared agency consultant, reported that electroshock treatments could produce amnesia for varying lengths of time, and that he had been able to obtain information from patients as they came out of the stupor that followed the shock treatments. He also reported that a lower setting of the Raider electroshock machine produced an excruciating pain that, while non-therapeutic, could be effective as third-degree method to make someone talk. Morse Allen asked if the psychiatrist had ever taken advantage of the groggy period that followed the normal electroshock to gain hypnotic control of his patients. No, he replied, but he would try it in the near future and report back to the agency. The psychiatrist also mentioned that continued electroshock treatments could gradually reduce the subject to a vegetable level, and that these treatments could not be detected unless the subject was given EEG tests within 2 weeks. Something would be far more appropriate and certainly safer. In 1952, the Office of Scientific Intelligence proposed giving another private sector $100,000 to develop Bluebird-related neurosurgical techniques, presumably lobotomy-connected. Similarly, the Security Office planned to use outside consultants to find out about such techniques as ultrasonics, vibrations, concussions, high and low pressure, the uses of various gases in airtight chambers, diet variations, caffeine, fatigue, radiation, heat and cold, and change of light. Agency officials looked into all these areas and many others. Some they studied intensively, others they merely discussed with consultants. For a better documented case of narcotherapy and narcohypnosis. 41. Oh, this is talking about blackmail, and I think this is things that they do to them to get them on board. Overt blackmail is a highly overrated form of control. The senior counterintelligence man notes that while Russians frequently use some variety of entrapment, sexual or otherwise, the CIA rarely did. Very few agency case officers were tough enough to pull it off and sustain it, he says. Anytime an agent has been forced to cooperate, you can take it for granted that he has two things in his mind. He is looking for a way out and for revenge. Given the slightest opportunity, he will hit you right between the eyes. Blackmail could backfire in unexpected ways. John Stockwell remembers an agent in Southeast Asia who wanted to quit. The case officer leaned on the guy and said, "Look, friend, we still need your intelligence and we have receipts that you signed, which we can turn over to the local police." The agent blew his brains out, leaving a suicide note regretting his cooperation with the CIA and telling how the agency had tried to blackmail him. It caused some problems with the local government. Page 42, this cynical operator describes his usual technique, which turns out to be a form of false idealism. You've got to treat a man as an equal and convince him that you're partners in this thing. Even if he's a Communist Party member, you can't deal with him like a crumb. You sit down with him and you ask, how are the kids? And you remember that he told you what he told you last time and his son was having trouble at school. You build a personal rapport. If you treat him like dirt or an object of use, eventually he'll turn on you or drop off the bandwagon. Page 178. The press seized upon the sensational details and virtually ignored two even more revealing sentences buried in the Rockefeller text. The drug program was part of a much larger CIA program to study possible means for controlling human behavior. Other studies explored the effects of radiation, electroshock, psychology, psychiatry, sociology, and harassment substances. Page 160. He asked young CIA secretaries to stay after work and ran them through hypnotic paces, proving to his own satisfaction that he could make them do whatever he wanted. He had secretaries steal secret files and pass them on to total strangers, thus violating the most basic CIA security rules. He got them to steal from each other and to start fires. He made one of them report to the bedroom of a strange man and then go into a deep sleep. This activity clearly indicates that individuals under hypnosis might be compromised and blackmailed. On February 19, 1954, Morse Allen simulated the ultimate experiment in hypnosis, the creation of a Manchurian candidate, or a programmed assassin. Page 161. The victim was a secretary whom he put into a deep trance and told to keep sleeping until he ordered otherwise. He then hypnotized a second secretary and told her that if she could not wake up her friend, her rage would be so great that she would not hesitate to kill. Allen left a pistol nearby, which the secretary had no way of knowing was unloaded. And then, even though she had earlier expressed a fear of firearms of any kind, she picked up the gun and shot her sleeping friend. I don't think there was a bullet in that gun, though. After Allen brought the killer out of her trance, she had apparent amnesia for the event, denying she would ever shoot anyone. Okay, so I kind of skimmed both of these books, and I just wanted to share this information because as a targeted individual, some of us, I feel like we're all going through the same thing, and they kind of have the same goal for all of us. And I figured, like, if I could get these books, I could just, like, kind of share it with y'all. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I hope everybody is okay.